Good morning, everybody. It's Tuesday morning, and this is our weekly webinar. And we're delighted to have our Women's Inspire member, Ger Lally, with us today from Lally Associates. Do you want to introduce yourself there, Ger? Hi.
Good morning, everybody.
Where are you based, Ger?
I'm based in Dublin. I'm from Galway. Locked in Dublin for now 5-6 weeks. Longest time I have been in Dublin without heading west. So I'm from the west of Ireland. I do a lot of work in the west of Ireland, and I try and base myself there all during the summer. But obviously, with everything in lockdown, we are in the house, 4 adults, husband, 2 teenagers, one doing the Leaving Cert, one doing his finals in college. So it's an interesting dynamic, and a dog.
I know, I think a lot of people will identify with that one, all right. Right, so Ger, go ahead there now. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself first, about, why you are the expert here?
Well, I'm the expert. So over 25 years ago, I set up Lally and Associates as an independent communications consultant. And what that basically means is that I coach, I train, and I mentor senior people, teams, managers, companies all across Ireland, the UK, and sometimes in further afield, Europe and the US. So basically, wherever the job is, I will go. So what I have done over the last number of years is, apart from training, apart from coaching, is I've really focused on communications. And that is all about getting the best out of people, making sure that they find what is their authentic voice and their best way of communicating their message, and helping them to understand in their role, in their business, in whatever part they play, or they could be going for an interview, or they could be a startup, that communications has to be always on. You are always on.
Yeah.
And some people think, communications is about presentation, and presentation is about when I have a slide deck and I have to be in front of an audience of people and I have to present, my very fancy slides. Well, that's one form of presentation, but actually every single day we're presenting. So whether we're in a meeting, or we're across a table from somebody, or we're at a cash desk, or we're in an interview, or we're in front of our team, or whatever scenario we're in, we are presenting. So that's why we always have to be on. And that's really fundamental. Communications, I would always say to people, is probably the most career enhancing skill you can have. So if you can communicate well, you'll find yourself progressing, you'll find yourself succeeding, and you'll find yourself in a win-win situation more of the time.
Absolutely, totally agree with you. So can you give us some tips then this morning? A lot of people, let us know if you're a business owner or where you're, like, what it is you do, and any questions about communication. But Ger, tell us a little bit about, okay, for a small business owner, for example, what do you see are the biggest mistakes they make?
Well, the biggest mistakes that people make generally, I suppose it would be very, wrong to just focus on a small business. I think generally the biggest mistakes that people make are down to too much information, the feeling that you need to tell everything you know, not having prepared, so not having a plan, and not realizing that communications is hard work, and you have to work at engaging and connecting. And if you keep that focus of, I have to engage, I have to connect, I've got to work really hard at this, then you are going to be more successful as a communicator. And that's across all channels. So that's from written to spoken, to being in front of people or whatever. So you have to understand what it is you have to say. How can I say it in a much more succinct and brief and with clarity? And how will I do it in a way that's going to engage and that's going to connect with people so that they're going to feel, this is important to me, I've got something from this, and I'm going to remember it.
And what makes a good communicator then?
understanding your audience, first
Excellent.
of all, is key. It's probably 9/10 of the success, to be able to read a room. Now, whether that room has one person in it, or one person across the table from you, or 100 people in a larger space, you have to understand who is your listener. And then you've got to match the message to that listener. And it has to be relevant to them. And, you know, all my clients know me as the so what girl, because I will always say to people, make sure that what you're saying passes the so what test. In other words, is it relevant? Or are they going to sit there and listen to you and go, so what? What's this got to do with anything? So always make it relevant.
Yeah, I agree. And actually on Twitter, that's really a good skill as well, is to be able to get the message, fine tune it, think about your audience and think about what your audience are going to think when they see your tweet. Are they going to be inspired? Are they going to get value from it? Are they going to, or is this just, so what? So what is it you have to say? Like, make sure that you're adding value all the time as well. I for Twitter. So so one question that I was given here was, are you born a good communicator?
You're born with a certain ability, but anyone can become good with a lot of practice. And once you know a few key skills. So it's not, it's pretty similar to, are you born a golfer? Well, you're born with an ability to pick up the game, but if you understand how to play and get lots of, you know, coaching and understand the fundamentals and the skills and the techniques and practice and practice and practice, you'll get to a point where it'll become like second nature. And communications is exactly the same as that. So everybody has an ability to be the best they can be for themselves, but you've got to work at it and you have to practice and you've got to communicate continuously and keep perfecting how you're doing it. So even when it comes to, you know, and we depend so much on written communications, we depend so much on email communications. Always ask yourself, when you've finished your email, read it back. How can I make that more succinct? How can I be more to the point? The same with, you know, your spoken communications. Could I have made that briefer? Could I have been more succinct to the point? Or as my 18-year-old likes to say from time to time, long story short, Mum. And you know, that's what it's about nowadays, is how can we be more succinct and have greater clarity.
Absolutely. Somebody, Grania, saying, agree. I often ask myself, who cares? And then Marie has said, definitely agree. Practice makes perfect, but needs to be authentic to you. You do have a presentation. Do you want to go into that now, or just to see? We have a few other questions, like if anyone has questions, by the way.
So let's try my share screen.
Yeah. If you have got questions, just click the ask question button and we'll go over them later. So bear with us with the old technology here, because we're on a different Mac to normal. So
so share is up at the top.
There, Anne is here and Janet are here, and yeah, great to see you. And I see some other people have joined. I'm just going to welcome them while you're doing that. So we have, Jackie has joined us, Sharon from Cork has joined us, Sharon's from my team, she's cool. Sharon Spellman is here, Sheena, probably is it Sheena, sorry. Stephen is still here, well done Stephen, blessed art thou amongst women. So yeah, we're going to go in, Sheena, thank you. So yeah, we can see the slide, just has to go into the green button or whatever it was you pressed the last time.
Okay, so just a couple of slides, guys, that I wanted to run through, and I've transferred from PowerPoint over to Keynote on an Apple Mac, so it's a little bit fuzzy, one or two of the slides, so bear with me. But right now, what we're experiencing all over, whether you're an SME, a startup, an owner, a consultant, an employee, an employer, or you work in a larger company, there's a considerable amount of tension. There's a lot of unrest. There's a lot of uncertainty. And there are lots and lots of stress levels, but we are taking in so much information. I don't know about you, but I know from my point of view that I am like a sponge when it comes to information about where we're at on our daily numbers, statistics, updates, reports, and so on. So it can be quite exhausting. But what we have to remember that we need, if we are a manager, a business owner, our fundamental job right now is to communicate. The key to all of this for our teams, for our employees, for anyone we're interacting with is communication. And it's communication that must be clear, it needs to be honest, it needs to be respectful, and it needs to be relevant. So that's really, really important. So if we look around and we see some people who are doing really, really good at that, you know, our own leaders in this country, the people we're looking up to, doing a great job with making communication very clear and very honest. Many people share these concerns with me when I ask them, you know, what concerns you about communications? And this might be something that resonates with you. The top three would be, how can I get people to listen to me? I'm not sure they're listening. I'm going into my meeting on a regular basis, but are they really getting it? Are they listening to me? How am I going to understand that? How am I going to know that? Why do I get so nervous? The thoughts of having to be in front of a group of people is nerve-wracking. Even switching on a camera on a Zoom call makes me feel nervous and uncomfortable. How can I keep people's attention? So they're the kind of key things that people tell me and that I hear a lot of throughout the different kinds of people I work with. All of these things can be unraveled by understanding a few key fundamental skills. The other thing that's really key and that you need to keep in mind is do not overload with too much information. And there's a danger to do that. What you want to share is some knowledge and experience, and that always equals wisdom. And so what you're sharing is wisdom. And by sharing your wisdom, you want to fully engage your listener, your audience, and make sure that they give you feedback. So you've heard what they've said. So I suppose when I was talking to Sam about this session, you know, we were putting a title on it and I played around with a couple of different titles, but the word impact in this title is really important because communications should always be about communicating with impact, because that's what is going to give you, you know, added power, increased power. And as Sam well knows, you know, social media, Twitter, Facebook, whatever platform you're on, or whether you engage with it or not, the reality is that it has a huge impact on how we communicate. We want information quicker and faster than ever before. People have less time and they are quite impatient. So give me the highlights, give me the key points. So what you need to remember is clarity, constant, and confidence. And confidence equals trust. So really, really important that you communicate trust. So there's a couple of important slides to share with you at this point. So I'm just going to go out of this screen again. So just bear with me.
I closed it. Is that okay? Yeah.
Okay, so we're back to it. So that's just a couple of things to give you a feel for, you know, key things around communication. So you might want to ask me a couple of questions around that.
We have a few actually coming in there, Margaret. Margaret in Cork has said, how can you build your confidence at delivering?
Well, first of all, Margaret, you need to know what you're talking about. You need to understand what you're talking about, and you need to believe in it. So it's not just enough to have knowledge. You need to really understand it. And then you need to understand, why is the person who's listening to me, or the people listening to me, why will they be interested in this? What are they going to get from this? And then you're going to be able to convince them of what this is about. So once you shift the focus from yourself onto whoever your listener is, because remember, it's all about them. It's not about you.
Yeah.
Then it becomes a much easier and a much more confident way to get your message across. And look, practice runs. Always, always recommend a couple of practice runs, a couple of key points that you would just say out loud to yourself, even before you go into a meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have another question here, actually. Rachel has asked, what's the best way to practice, especially now that we are in isolation?
Well, one of the scary things about all of this is that when we're on Zoom and when we're on Crowdcast or whatever, we're looking at ourselves more than ever. So for some people, that can be a little bit off-putting. I know, sometimes I'm there fixing my hair and going, oh God, I need to get to a hairdresser. That's not going to happen. So I'm playing around with all kinds of hairstyles right now. But to get used to looking at yourself, you need to sit in front of a mirror. So I would recommend, if you're going into a Zoom call, before you do that, sit in front of a mirror and talk to yourself in the mirror so that you're comfortable with your look. You might look and say, okay, I need a stronger lipstick. I don't wear lipstick. Maybe I need to put on lipstick. Maybe I need to have less busy stuff going on behind me. And actually, that's another thing, which is not really about communications, but it is in a way. What does the background say about you? So I was preparing somebody for an interview during the week that he was going to be doing with his superior boss over in the States. So I looked at the background around him and I said, is this where you're going to, have your interview? Yes. Now have a look at what's happening around you. So he had one shelf with all kids' toys, thrown into the shelf. And then he had another sort of plastic amount of boxes piled up with loads of books thrown in and loads of coloring material and so on. So clearly he was in the kids' playroom. Nothing wrong with that. But it didn't convey a very professional image to his interviewer. So how are you going to ready that? I said, take out all the kids' toys and fill those shelves with books. Doesn't matter what the books are. Find all the books you have in the house and stick them in. Put a nice print up in the background behind you and pull the blinds down. And now you're conveying, I'm a professional. I'm in my professional office. Here I go. So when it comes to communication, image is obviously very important also. How you look. And, people talk about this executive presence, and that is a huge part to play with it.
Yeah, and you know what? Actually, gives a smile there for a second. Will you just go like that? Yeah, smile. Yeah, because I'm getting a nice clip, and I was trying to get a good picture of us because it's really important. Communication. What I'm doing right now, actually, folks, is I'm actually taking a screenshot of the webinar so I can tweet it out later so people can see. So they can see Ger, they can see the people that are here, the comments, and this is part of communication for me on social media. I'm talking about social media, but also you can see my background, just that you mentioned that. And you might notice that it's not all books on the shelf, but I do have awards up there. And that gives me a bit of credibility, I think, when I'm doing my calls. But also it's fun. It has my bit of fun there, my little Tweety bird and my hashtag, because I talk about social media a lot. And I made it like that on purpose here, because I wanted to kind of come across as more colourful and a little bit different and not too kind of formal.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I suppose maybe if you look at my background, people are probably wondering, and I see a few comments there. I know in my Twitter profile, it says I'm a mad horse racing fan. And being from Galway, you'd have to be a horse racing fan, really. And I'm from a farm, where we have bred horses. My late dad started doing that when he got out of dairy farming. So horse is a huge part of my life. So you can see there's a lot of horsey stuff going on in the background.
Yeah. It's really nice, and it actually builds trust, doesn't it, as well, as part of the whole building trust thing. When people are watching, like the first thing Rachel said actually was, oh my God, I love the horses, Yeah. So you're actually building trust straight away. So it is amazing.
And then the other thing that I have, you can see a photograph over my right-hand corner, right-hand shoulder, and that's a photograph of my mum and dad, who are hugely important, obviously, in inspiring me to always work really hard and to always do my best. Now, they sadly are no longer with me, but their voice is always in my ear. So when I'm doing anything important or anything special like this, I can hear them saying, get out there and do your best. Always give it 100%. So that's their, in the background also.
That's lovely. That's really nice, actually. Really, really nice. There's another question here. I have gotten quiet as a home worker. I am not used to speaking. How do I find ways to practice? Probably the same as Rachel, how to practice, yeah.
Yeah, and if you have somebody at home that you can practice with, I would also recommend it. So whether that's a housemate, a partner, even the kids, you know, they can be a great audience. Put the kids in front of you and get them to sit down. And if they get what you're saying and they understand it, it's probably the best litmus test you can do. I've often prepared people for media interviews, and I always make the point that when somebody's explaining their product or explaining their business or explaining some kind of a challenge or a crisis that might be going on, you have to make sure that you explain it in a way that your great-grandaunt in wherever in rural Ireland is listening to you on the radio gets it. So if she gets it, then you've obviously explained it clearly. And if you don't, you know, if you can't explain it simply, then you don't understand it. So, you know, I think kids make a great practice audience because you have to explain it simply to them. And to do that, you have to understand it. And if you can do that, then that's a great bit of practice.
Absolutely, absolutely. And thanks. I'm glad you can see me now again, Deirdre. Sometimes if you can't hear or if the screen goes, folks, just refresh your screen. On autistic spectrum, I have to be constantly on to navigate everyday life. How do you avoid burnout? That's a very good question now. Yeah.
You need to take what well, some people would say I use it as an excuse, but I like to have me time. Now that might be 5 minutes or it could be 15 minutes. Now, whatever that me time is. For me, it's a run early morning if I can, or late in the evening with a pal when we used to be able to do that back in the day, weeks ago. So now I'm on my own running, which is a different vibe. So I have my actually for the first time in 15 years of running, I'm now listening to music, which is a whole completely different way of doing things. I'm used to running with somebody and catching up on gossip and talking. That's my me time. That's my switch off. And I started doing that and getting into running way back in the last, you know, serious recession when everything hit and everything was falling apart. And both my parents were getting sick at the time and we were going through a really tough time. And I found that running was a fantastic escape. Now, it didn't have to be, you know, massively fast or a huge amount of ground covered. I started off, you know, just doing 5Ks, and then we started setting ourselves targets, and just it became, you know, what we did, a half marathon every year, and it became a fun thing. But it, you know, whatever it is, it could be another thing I like to do is I love watching Coronation Street. I probably have never, you know, I've rarely missed an episode of Coronation Street. Now, some people laugh and, you know, in a world of Netflix, they think that's a little bit old fashioned, but that's my me time. Nobody can come near me for that half hour of Coronation Street. So I don't know if that can be quite useful if you can find a little bit of time to have that little bit of me time.
Yeah, and it's so important. You know, I actually, this morning, I feel very smug now. This morning, I woke up early and I went for a walk, 2K walk. I saw the sun coming up over the hill. Did a little video on Twitter to share it with everybody. And then I came back and did a little bit of beginner's yoga. So I'm really trying to do the self-care thing, but I really feel great now. Ladies, yeah. I really feel great. And I actually wouldn't normally get up that early and do it. I'd normally do it in the evening. So it is important.
And what's important about that, Samantha, is that, you know, you have now found a routine. And a routine in the times that we're in right now is really important. And I know that there are many of you that are, you know, on this call from various other kinds of organizations and companies and so on. And your routine is really important. And that routine should include communications in it. So, you know, if you have a team, if you have a group of people that you're responsible for, small team, big team, whatever, have a routine with them that you start every morning with a call. So whether it's on Zoom or Crowdcast or whatever platform, WebEx or whatever platform you're on, and have that call with them to check out and see how they're doing. To ask them, how was their weekend? Let it not be all about work and all about forecasts and all about numbers and all about doom and gloom and challenges and everything. Ask about the weekend. What did you do? Ask about what they're watching on Netflix. Ask about the recipe that they have tried out, because everybody seems to be baking and making cocktails and so on. So those kind of things can then become a little routine, throughout the week. And then on a Thursday evening or a Friday, you can make it, a little bit more formal and so on. So that kind of routine, incorporating communications, really, really important, because it means that you are constantly on and you're communicating, and you're not leaving anybody out, because it's very easy to be isolated. And I know from listening to a lot of people in my business network who are working from home for the very first time, finding it very isolating. I've always had an office at home. I've never had an office anywhere else but at home. So I'm used to working at home. I'm used to the discipline that is required. And trust me, as you know now, you do have to be disciplined and organized. And, you got to start off with your little routine of making your list of what you need to do and all of those kind of little tricks. But, communication means that you don't leave anybody out and, you're not isolated.
Actually, I'm just talking, Anne has just asked, can we summarize the last point again? I think the last point that you made about the self-care, do you mean, or do you mean about communicating, making a habit of doing a call, I think she said, Anne. If you want to make a habit, bring communication into your daily habit. Yes, the habit. So Anne just wanted to know, could you just summarize the last point, which I think really what she was saying was, Ger was saying about making it a habit to have communication part of your routine. So a phone call, or I think Zoom call is great at the moment. Practice being on the screen, practice putting your head in the right spot, practice actually getting up and doing your makeup and putting a bit of lipstick on, practice, your background, like do things like that, even do a little call with one of the Women's Inspire members or someone, just to keep in touch with each other. And that's why I started Women's Inspire Network, Ger, was because I felt isolated. And so I know what it's like working from home. I've done it for years, so I felt so isolated. I started Women's Inspire Network.
And you're right about, and I see Aoife has commented there about getting dressed from the top up always instills confidence and sets your intent for the day. And you're absolutely right. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, I was, getting up into the gym gear, and then I was coming into my office and I'm starting doing my calls, and suddenly going, it's lunchtime and I'm still in the running gear because I still haven't had a chance to do that, and I have no makeup on. So that's not the best approach. You do need to start off, get the makeup on, whatever it is, get the fancy top on. It doesn't matter what's below the top. And a little bit of jewelry helps. Whatever it takes that just gives you that little, okay, I can now sit up and I feel good. So, it's like when we get dressed up to go to an event, we feel good because we know we look well. And that's important now as, also as much as it has been in the past. So even more so because, if we're using any of these virtual call programs, we are very much front and center.
Yeah, I just want to say to Stephen, you don't have to put makeup on. It's okay. But you just, there is a gentleman in the chat there, Stephen. So you don't have to put makeup on, Stephen, unless you want to, of course, unless you need. But, there is a question here that we're just going to bring up before we kind of start wrapping up. But media interviews, Ger, okay? Have you any tips, do's and don'ts for media interviews? Because a lot of our members are getting a lot of PR at the moment, because at the moment, the journalists are just so tired of COVID stuff. They just want something positive, a little bit of positivity. So there's lots of PR opportunities out there at the moment. So, Ger, any advice?
Yeah, lots of great opportunities with local media. If you have a local business, local radio, really, really powerful right now, because more people are listening to local radio because more people are at home. You need to have a story to tell. And a story is different from just talking about your business. Think about the business you have, and have you got a story to tell about that business of something you're doing right now? And stories are interesting and stories are engaging. And if you can do that, then you will definitely get people talking about you, which is what you want. That's the reason you go on and, a media interview, is to, have your brand talked about, have you talked about, have awareness created. So all of these things will become possible if you're interesting, and interesting will get you remembered. So find that story that connects to your business right now. Have you found a different way of doing business? Have you changed from what you're doing now to adapt in some way? So, loads of fantastic examples. I know locally there's some great examples of how different businesses have really pivoted and found a different way of doing something because of having to do it, but also out of crisis comes opportunity. And you may have found that opportunity. You may be that lucky person that has cracked something, and here's your chance to tell that story. So if you have that story to tell, get onto your local media, get onto your local radio stations, and they will be only too delighted to talk to you.
I totally agree with you. And actually, it's funny, do you know another great opportunity as well is collaboration, during this time. And it's something I've really been pushing people to, which we're doing today, actually. Yeah. We're doing it right now, folks. So Ger, kindly offered to do this. And I just think, the value that she's bringing is important. And I'll remember that. So then if someone else asks me about someone that can talk about this topic, I'll recommend Ger straight away, and that's how it works. Jane just said she puts perfume on to make it feel like she's going somewhere.
Yeah.
But so the do's and don'ts then for the interview, though, like, are there any other tips you can give us before? Because
I would, for a media interview, it's short, it's succinct, you need to get in and get out. So I'm a huge believer in the rule of 3. What are the 3 things that you want to say, that you want to get across? And because you're on a radio interview, or indeed if you're on a virtual call like this, like I've lots of little bits of paper around here in front of me, nobody can see that. Have your cheat list in front of you with your 1, 2, 3. They're the 3 things I am going to say no matter what. I'm going to stitch them in some way in that interview to make sure that I come away going, yes, I nailed it. So your preparation, your 1, 2, 3, your story, and enjoy it. Be yourself. Really important. And the only other real thing that's important for communications is pace. We tend generally, as Irish people, to speak too fast. We speak too fast when we're nervous. We speak too fast when we're overly enthusiastic about our subject or our story. Take your time. Slow down. And if nobody has ever said that to you before, believe me, you do need to slow down. Everybody has to slow down. So I keep saying it to myself. It's that little voice in my head, slow down, when I'm speaking in public, when I'm talking to an audience, when I'm being interviewed or whatever. So keep that in mind, slow down.
Yeah, I know.
Something is so true, but so hard, Mary. And yes, you're right, it is hard. But one thing that will help you to slow down is remember to breathe. Now that sounds so basic, but remember to stop. In through your nose, out through your mouth. That pause has slowed you down. But it also makes you sound so much more confident because you're not afraid to do that.
I find sometimes if I'm on stage, when I pause, isn't there power in the pause as well? If you say something about
you know, a lot of people are afraid of a pause because they think, oh, people will think I've forgotten what I'm going to say next or I've lost it. But in fact, listeners will always appreciate it because you've given them a chance to absorb what you've said. So allow the pause so that they can think, they can take it in, they can absorb it, and then you can think about what you're going to say next. So it's it works for both sides. So important. Remind yourself to do it. We got to train ourselves to do it. We got to push ourselves to do it.
Well, thank you so much, Ger. I know that you train people how to communicate and stuff like that. Like, do you have anything? Is there anywhere you'd like me to send people? Your website, perhaps, to have a look?
My website or to my email address directly. In this time of disarray and strange times that we're living in, I am offering a 20-minute call with anybody who would like to have a conversation about communications, about their needs, about what they're thinking, what they're not. There's no obligation. It's just a free chat. And then from that, maybe there's something that they would like to do with me. I train large groups, small groups, individuals. I do a lot of individual coaching. I mentor some startups and quite a number of SMEs as well. And then I do a huge amount of internal communications for large multinationals and manufacturing companies. So I have a whole diverse range of companies and clients and people I interact with.
Actually, I have one question. I know a lot of people go to networking events, and even now we're networking online. Do you help people with the 60-second pitch? You know, when you're asked to do that? Do you do anything like that?
Absolutely. 60-second, 10-second, half an hour pitch. I do a lot of pitching, for helping a lot of pitches. And I see there's a couple of legal companies there mentioned.
Yes.
I would do a lot of pitches with legal firms because it's a very competitive area, no more than any other professional service. And it means that, you know, you really have a very short space of time to go out there and pitch for that, you know, piece of business.
Well, I'm going to drop your email address in here. If anyone would like to contact you, definitely get in touch with Ger. Follow her on Twitter, and there's her website as well. You can click there to follow her on Twitter. So thank you so much for your questions, and I hope we answered them all. Thank you so much, Joanne. Thank you very much. Ger, is there any other way we can help you at the moment as a network? Is there any way we can support you?
No, just tell everybody about Ger Lally.
See you in the Facebook group.
And if anyone be direct.
Yeah, exactly. And if anyone is actually not a member of Women's Inspire Network and you would like to be on webinars like this every week, please join us. We can help you and you won't be feeling so isolated on your own. So thank you so much, Ger. And I shall see you on Twitter. You have lots of notifications on Twitter at the moment. So
and I can share those slides as well if anybody wants them.
Great. Thank you so much. All right. See you, folks. Thanks a million.
Bye.
Have a great day, everybody.